Hello everyone, this is Orlando from A Collector's Dream, and today I want to talk about one of the greatest shortstops ever, and I'm going to go ahead and try to make a case for him being in the Hall of Fame. And I'm showing this Cap Anson card because this gentleman played in that era, and this is the Goodwin Champions Cap Anson, one of the most beautiful cards produced in the 1800s. And the reason I put Cap Anson here is because Cap Anson was considered the greatest player in the 1800s. As far as the statistics and things like that, the first guy to ever have 3,000 hits. He was, him and King Kelly were regarded as probably the best players of that era. King Kelly, unfortunately, passed away young at 35 years old and didn't have a long career. But Cap Anson did, and he amassed over 3,000 hits and became one of the first people inducted in the Hall of Fame. So I wanted to show him because he is considered and that's the back of the card there. He's considered the best player from the 19th century, from the 1800s. But I want to talk about some other players, and I want to first begin kind of in the modern era and kind of move back. So I want to show you, I'm not going to show you who it is, but I'm going to show you some stats here. I'm going to move Cap up here a little bit. So here's some stats of some of the players that are in the Hall of Fame. And this is a shortstop, just like the guy I'm going to show you. And his WAR was 76. And I'm going to show you another player. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and put all the stats together here. So I'm going to show you two players that are in the Hall of Fame, and this guy is not in the Hall of Fame. So this is what I want to talk about. I'm going to try to make a case here and see what you guys think. Because what happened, the Hall of Fame didn't start until 1939. So, the first people inducted, of course, Ty Cobb and Babe Ruth and, players like that, Cap Anson and stuff. So they were considered really the best in those days. But that's 1939. That was, 60, almost 70 years after baseball started. So there was a lot of players that kind of were forgotten in time. And I'm going to share one of those guys today. So I want to talk first about this gentleman right here. The most recent inductee here, and this is, I'm not going to tell you who the player is, but his WAR was 76.9. His WAR was 61, and his WAR is 58. These two are in the Hall of Fame. This gentleman is not. The middle is not. Batting average, 262. Also 262. Batting average, 290. Hits, 2,460. 2,041, 2,677. Now, there's a big difference here because the games played here was 2,500 games played. Again, 2,500 games played. I tried to find people that were comparable. But this gentleman only played in 1,700 games. Why? Because the seasons were shorter in those days. People didn't play as long. It wasn't really as, as professional as it is today. So this gentleman played 800 less games than the other two, and pretty comparable in hits. RBIs, 793 for this player, 827 for this guy, playing a lot less games. 791 for this guy over here. OPS, 666, Hall of Famer. 653, Hall of Famer. 712, non-Hall of Famer. Home runs, these were not home run hitters. These were all infielders, shortstops, basically, is what I'm talking about. Because you're going to compare positions together. I'm not going to compare shortstops to outfielders, or first basemen and things like that. So I try to make a fair comparison. OPS, 666, 712, 653. Home runs, 28, 27, 83. Again, this guy played a lot fewer games. Runs, 1,250 runs scored, 1164, 1335. So this gentleman here, he's not in the Hall of Fame. Why isn't he in the Hall of Fame? 61 WAR, higher than 58 WAR. Not as good as this guy here. This was a surefire Hall of Famer, chosen right away. And who is this guy? Ozzie Smith, of course. Ozzie Smith, Hall of Famer for the Cardinals. Give you a little more stats on Ozzie. Ozzie Smith was shortstop. He played for 19 years and had a fielding percentage of .978. I included that because really his WAR is high because he was such a good fielder. And they, in the old days, they didn't keep good track of fielding records as they do today. Back in the old days with basically one umpire. So here is Ozzie Smith, surefire Hall of Famer. Nobody can deny that. Nobody can deny those numbers. So I'm going to put him here. Who's this guy? Another Hall of Famer with a WAR 55.8, 262 lifetime average, almost 3,000 hits, 2,600. And again, played for a lot of years. Played as many games as Ozzie. Again, a shortstop, another Hall of Famer, Luis Aparicio. Luis Aparicio, again, was an incredible player. And here's a couple of Aparicio cards. I'm going to show you those in a minute. But I want to talk about who I feel was a real star and has been kind of left out of this whole picture. So I'm going to go ahead and put the stats up here so you can kind of take a good look at it as I talk about this gentleman right here. And who was he? He was a player from the 1800s. And 61 WAR, 290 batting average in his career, 2,041 hits, 827 strikeouts, and only 1,700 games. So compare that to the other guys, and you'll see the difference. And who is this guy? He is, and I'll show you the card in a minute, Jack Glasscock. Who the hell is Jack Glasscock? He was shortstop and second baseman. He played for 17 years. Again, in those years, they didn't play, as many games a year. His fielding percentage was .911. Luis Aparicio, .972. Now, why was his fielding percentage like that? He didn't wear a glove. So let me show you who Jack Glasscock is and how he played and why possibly his fielding percentage was lower. It's the only thing I could see, but I'm going to show you why. Here is who I think should be Hall of Famer, Jack Glasscock. That is Jack Glasscock. That's the 1888 Goodwin Champion card of Jack Glasscock. Shortstop for Indianapolis. You can see that. And this is how they played. No gloves, dirt infield, rocks and things. Not the best infield ever maintained. And I want to read you some quotes as you look at the cards of these three guys. I want to read you a little bit about Jack Glasscock. It says, actually it was John Wesley Jack Glasscock. His nickname was Pebbly. Pebbly. Why? Because they say that he would have to do the groundskeeping, and around shortstop, there were pebbles everywhere. So before the game, he would go around and pick up all those pebbles because without a glove, he had to field those balls. Without groundskeepers, with the ball hitting pebbles, Ozzie made a great play one time where the ball bounced up, and with his bare hand, he snatched it over his head because the ball hit a pebble, a rock, and bounced up. I don't know if you remember that play, but I could just picture Pebbly Jack Glasscock doing that and reaching up with his hands, trying to get the balls that hit the pebbles, hit the rocks, and just took bad bounces. His contemporary, the founder of the Sporting News, Al Spink, wrote, he was acknowledged, this is Glasscock, he was acknowledged by all his fellow players to be the greatest in his positions and one of the greatest players from a fielding standpoint the game has ever seen. And this was a guy that played with him and that actually started the Sporting News. And it says here, current sabermetrician Charles Faber rates Glasscock as the best shortstop of the 19th century. So those are things that were said while he played. So let me tell you a little bit more about him. It says that as shortstop, with Bill Phillips at first and Fred Dunlop playing second, they earned the nickname Stonewall Infield. Spink remembered that as perhaps the greatest infield ever known. So Faber rates the trio as the best double play combos of the 1800s. And in 1881, Glasscock led shortstops in put out, assist, and fielding average. He followed up the National League, leading the National League in assist and double plays in 1882 and 1883. 1883, he reached star level, batting third in the lineup. And, he pushed his average all the way up to 290. And it says that, he unfortunately didn't make a lot of money. He made $1,800 as a yearly salary. And he was also part manager, because in those days the manager was kind of the man. One of the best players in the team would be the manager. And he played for horrendous teams. Unfortunately, he played for some bad teams. And it says on here that in 1889, the year after this card came out, Faber believes that he was the Major League Player of the Year that season. He led the majors with 205 hits and finished second in batting with a .352 batting average. That's Jack Glasscock. So he led the league with .352 batting average, the highest yet achieved by a shortstop at the time. He ranked second in doubles and total bases and scored 128 runs and stealing 57 bases. He even took over as manager, and because the team had a deplorable 25-43 record when he took over. And then under his prodding, they won 34 games and lost only 32 once he became the manager. So he was an incredible player. So there goes Jack. Pebbly Glasscock. That's him. Look at the shoes he had to play with. Look at the field they had to play with. There was no real home run fences back there. It was just just trees and stuff. So just kind of making a case. The other thing about him is that he was impossible to strike out. And they said that he was the most difficult batter of his day to strike out. In his career, now this guy played, remember, 17 years. In his career, he struck out only once. It says in his career, he struck out once every 33 at-bats. In 1887 through 89, those 3 years, he struck out only 8 times. It would be 35 years before Joe Sewell bettered his 1890 average of 64 at-bats per strikeout. 64 at-bats per strikeout. And that record was not beaten until 35 years later. So, when he finally hung up the glove, he never adjusted to wearing. He retired. And, he actually went and played a little bit in the minor leagues in 1901. He topped the Western League with a .431 average. And, he ended up retiring and died of a stroke in 1947. But the reason I want to talk about him is because here's some of his stats here. If you look at the stats and you read about this guy, everyone said that he was the best shortstop of the 19th century, of the 1800s. And he's not in the Hall of Fame. It's to me, it's a no-brainer. He's one of these guys that should be in the Hall of Fame, along with King Kelly and along with Cap Anson, because he was the best fielder in those days and one of the best hitters in those days. Again, he led the league in batting. 1890, he hit .336, and as you can see, his stats really line up nicely. But what happens, of course, during those years is that, you know, when 1939, when they started the Hall of Fame, you know, they forgot about all these older players, and people like Frank Fritsch, who was kind of the Veterans Committee and stuff. You know, they kind of got their buddies in that played in the late 1900s. I mean, not late, early 1900s and 1910s and 20s. So they forgot about the guys from the 1800s, and one of the guys they forgot about was Jack, and maybe because he's got a funny name, maybe Glasscock is not the most greatest name around. But, you know, you can never forget this guy. He was the best fielder and one of the best hitters in the league. And what some consider, and all of the players in those days said, that he was the best shortstop and pretty much was the best infielder in baseball in the 19th century. So just wanted to share that with you guys. These guys played along with Cap Anson, but, you know, again, looking at the records, looking at 3 Hall of Famers that, you know, nobody will say that they don't belong in the Hall of Fame. Ozzie, Luis Aparicio, incredible players. But if you look at the stats, the WAR, you know, Glasscock had a higher WAR than Aparicio, had a higher batting average than both of them. The hits were kind of close, but he played in 800 fewer games. The RBIs, he had more RBIs than Aparicio and then Ozzie Smith. He had a higher OPS than both of them. Home runs, they didn't hit home runs back in the day, but he almost matched Ozzie, because again, home runs, they'd have to, you know, there were no fences back in those days. So 27 home runs in that era was a lot. And runs scored, 1,100 to 1,200 to 1,300 in the number of games he played. I think if you look at overall at Jack Glasscock's statistics compared to the other guys, compared to Aparicio, and compared to Ozzie Smith, I think I showed you some stats, and I think you'll agree that Glasscock should be considered as a Hall of Famer. In my opinion, he is. Here's some Aparicio cards I wanted to show you. This is for 1959 All-Star, and the Deckle Edge. So I wanted to share that with you. I wanted to talk a little bit about this guy here, and let you know a little bit about him. Played along with Cap Anson back in the day. And here are 2 different versions of the Goodwin Champions. One a portrait, and the other one is a fielding, and that is Mr. Pebbly Jack Glasscock, the best shortstop and infielder in the 1800s, in the 19th century, according to all of the writers and all of the players back in those days, from what I've read, and I read you a little bit about it. So thanks, guys. Just wanted to show you something that you may not even have heard of Jack Glasscock. But put him in, lump him in with Ozzie Smith and Luis Aparicio and several others infielders that played, and you'll see that you can make a case of him being in the Hall of Fame. So thanks, guys. Really appreciate you guys watching my videos. On Sunday, I'm going to be doing a live stream with Donnie Livestream, Don's Field of Dream Cards, and John, Wade Boggs fan. We've recorded it already, so they're going to release it on Sunday. It was a fun live stream. It wasn't really live, but it was fun. So hopefully you guys will watch that. And just got a couple other things coming up. Getting ready for the National. I just can't wait to see everybody there. So thanks everyone for watching. I don't want to make this video too much longer, but I wanted to make a case for Mr. Glasscock. Thanks everyone for watching. Have an awesome day. It's Orlando from A Collector's Dream.